Just test it. Talking to it. Talking to it loud. Give it.
On, not the red light's not coming on.
Very much.
Don't hear any.
Welcome everyone to tonight, to this council meeting, which in light of the current coronavirus situation is being presented in a different way. As chair of the meeting, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with section 27 of Council's Local Law number 1 of 2019. Myself, as the Chair and/or the CEO, have the discretion and authority to at any time direct the termination or interruption of the live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The public is able to view the meeting online via Council's YouTube page if you simply search Golden Plains Shire Council. The direct link is also available on our website at goldenplains.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made available on our website. Those in attendance in person tonight are advised to practice social distancing and the hygiene recommendations of the Department of Health and Human Services. Any questions submitted for public question time will not be read out at tonight's meeting, with all questions to receive a written response. Now, I will recite the opening declaration on behalf of all councillors. We, the councillors of Golden Plains Shire, declare that we will undertake on every occasion to carry out our duties in the best interest of the community and that our conduct shall maintain the standards of the Code of Good Governance so that we may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in this council by the people of the Golden Plains Shire. Council also acknowledges the traditional Wadawurrung owners of the land where we meet today. Council pays its respects to the Wadawurrung elders, both past and present, and extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Golden Plains Shire. Councillors, are there any apologies for this meeting or any requests for leave of absence? None. Councillors, we have a resolution before us to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 26th of May 2020 and the special meeting of Council held on the 9th of June 2020 as circulated. Can I have the mover? Moved Councillor Hansford, seconded Councillor Rowe. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillors, do we have any declarations of conflicts of interest? No conflicts of interests. As previously mentioned, any questions that would normally be taken at public question time can still be submitted but will be received in writing. Now we move to consider the formal agenda. Item number 7, business reports for decision, Assembly of Councillors. Mr. CEO.
Councillors, this is just your Assembly record for the last month, including the councillor briefing that was had in June.
Okay. Councillor, does anyone like to
I'll move it.
Moving that, Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Kirby. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Delegates report, item 7.2 from the 26th of May to today, the 22nd of June. Councillors, is there anyone that would like to speak to the councillor report? Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also just like to add that on the 22nd of June I attended the Highlands Lane
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Evans, followed by Councillor Kirby.
My meeting, G21 Transport Pillar, I didn't attend that, so cross that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
Yes, just that I did not attend the Rural Financial Council meeting group meeting. It was actually done via a newsletter, so I'll forward that on to everyone when I can find it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Any other councillors like to speak? I'll just make note of a couple of meetings and appreciating that it is very testing times, as councillors have recognised there, that many meetings are still continuing to be via Zoom, Teams and all these phone-ins. So it does make it quite challenging for the sector right across the board. But just a couple of meetings that I attended, which was one virtual meeting with Michaela Settle for the Linton Progress Association, but it was a very good example of how some of the use of Zoom can be used to actually engage. There was only a handful of residents from Linton there, but it gave a fantastic opportunity to be able to sit down, speak to members of the community, but then pack up your computer 30 minutes after that and then go back to getting food on the table for the kids and not having to drive an hour. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for council going into the future to be able to really engage with some of those smaller communities that for most of us as councillors and officers we have to travel over an hour to get to. So really good meeting. And also, there has been a number of tragic suicides in Geelong over the past number of months or this year. There's been 5 or 6 instances there, and we had a meeting with Christine Morgan, who came down and gave a presentation to G21 or to listen to our concerns around the region. Fantastic meeting to really engage and listen to, and there's some almost negative effects out of COVID, with a lot of young children not being able to engage with communities, football clubs, and the way they used to. So hopefully that's not too much of an emerging issue, but it's definitely worth noting, and it was a very, very worthwhile meeting. Thank you. Can I have somebody move the recommendation that council receive and note the delegates' report? Moved Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Phelan. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 7.3, the adoption of the 2020-2021 Golden Plains Shire Council Budget. Director O'Sullivan, if I could have you introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report seeks to formally adopt the 2021 budget, incorporating the 2021 rating fees and charges pursuant to Section 127 of the Local Government Act 1989. The draft budget has been prepared on the adopted principles within the 2017-2021 Council Plan and Strategic Resource Plan, and includes the 2% rate increase cap mandated by the state government. After making the document available for the public inspection and inviting submissions under Section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989, we received 9 submissions which addressed a total of 14 issues. A special meeting of Council was held on Tuesday the 9th of June 2020 to hear 4 submitters who requested to address the Council in support of their submission. Amendments to the budget that was provided on public submission has included a reduction of the annual garbage charge from $340 to $335, which is in line with the state government's deferral of the levy till 1st of January 2021. We've had confirmation of a grant funding of $1.3 million in relation to the local roads and infrastructure capital projects. We've had an increase of $100,000 for our financial assistant grant allocated for the general purpose grants. We've also confirmed the Working for Victoria grant funding of $1.1 million to provide employment to local residents impacted by the COVID-19. We've also included the rate calculations updated for the Stage 4 valuation data. And we've also included the budget submission for the provision of water supply to moored recreation reserve toilets of an amount of $15,500. I'll also note that the budget summary has now got total operating revenue of $50.1 million, total operating expenditure of $43.9 million, and this will deliver the services to Golden Plains community with increased focus on infrastructure maintenance. Our operating surplus is at 6.1 and an underlying deficit of 1.8 million. Our total capital works investment is 15 million, which makes up of asset renewal of 60%, capital upgrade of 24% and new assets of 16%. Overall, our financial performance indicators show sound financial management and are generally tracking in a positive way. I will now take the rest of the report as read. I will also note that as part of this draft budget, we've also included specific COVID-19 financial relief package, which has been provided for those residents and ratepayers that need relief during this COVID-19 environment. I'll take the rest of the report as read and note the recommendation as on screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, is there any questions, discussion? No questions. Then would anyone like to? I'll look to seek someone move a motion.
I'd like to put a
Moving a motion. What is the motion you'd like to put forward, Councillor Gilman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to add another item to current recommendation. So I'd also like to add $100,000 towards the COVID-19 hardship policy to further assist. So the existing recommendation that there will be extra line item, and I have got some. Oh, it's not working now either. Yeah. Sorry, thank you. I have got a copy of the motion here that I can hand out to other councillors if you would like. So I'll pass two down to you.
So it is.
We'll get.
So it is on the screen there. Away. So item number 3 then becomes the addition. There's no other change to the.
No, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. So the other items 1, 2, 4 and 5 remain unchanged from the original motion, and it's number 3, which allocates $100,000 towards the COVID-19 hardship policy to further assist ratepayers financially affected by COVID-19.
Very much. Would someone like to second the motion? Councillor Rowe. Councillor Gilbert, I'll ask you to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the residents that have made submissions in this budget process directly and those that are even on social media. I note that several residents have encouraged council to freeze rates, and I noticed that I think there's about 5 within the Shire, within the state of Victoria, other municipalities that have chosen to do that. So they are encouraging us to freeze the rates for all households this year. And whilst I respect and care that there's compassion behind that request, I propose that we do another solution, and that is that $100,000. So we know that many residents and businesses have and continue to suffer financially during this COVID-19 period. And we also know that for many households, their financial situation remains the same. So rather than reduce services or borrow extra money to give everyone a rate freeze, I believe that it makes more sense to give financial support to those who need it most. As a council, our financial policy was in place early, to support those that are struggling at this time, and that was to waive interest for money owed on rates and extensions on payments for animal registrations. Now, this is a good start, but I think that now we need to do something a little bit extra. So I propose that all residents and businesses who qualify for support under Council's financial hardship policy receive access to this dedicated fund in the form of a $100,000 allocation. Now, for most residents, this is just an allocated fund, and hopefully they won't ever need it. But it's more support than the 2% rate freeze that would be offered for those if we just did the rate freeze. And it goes directly to those who need it most. For those residents and community who've not been financially affected to date by COVID-19, and I include myself in that, I encourage you all that you please continue to pay your rates and your other bills to council as per normal, and that will allow us to allocate this money to those that really require the support from us now. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Rowe seconding the motion.
Yep, I'd just like to say the 2% rate cap equates to about approximately 420k in revenue. Of this, we will be spending approximately 25% of this revenue on COVID hardship policy and relief plans for our ratepayer customers by waiving interest on rates, developing a COVID financial hardship policy and promoting customer payment plans, and also business relief in the extension of permits for food registration for the time ceased trading, and waiving permit fees and discounted waste charge on additional bins. The best way to help those who have been affected by the pandemic is to give the help directly to those in most need. Now, Council, with plant and machinery expenditure, we have cut it back from the original estimate of $1.3 million to $723,000, with savings of $577,000 in non-replacement of new grader at a cost of $435,000 and a number of fleet vehicles and a couple of small trailers. Considering we have 4 graders in our fleet, with 3 having only done relatively low hours, the decision was made not to replace one of the Caterpillar graders until the next budget. This council has worked hard, especially with the 1920 rating strategy review, with the desired outcome of greater rate equity between different rating categories across the Shire, which resulted in a number of changes. One that comes to mind is establishing separate farm differentials for broadacre, intensive and small farms. We now have a differential rate for broadacre farming properties of 85%, down from the 90% of the previous year. This is a great outcome considering agriculture contributes $245 million to the output of the Golden Plains Shire economy and employs over 800 workers, which is 23% of the jobs in the Shire. I support this motion to amend the 2021 budget with the rates relief for those that need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Evans.
I'd like to put up another amendment, if I could. This amendment to the existing budget is not to apply the cap to the increase in the budget this year, as indicated by many submitters. So, if I may speak on that. Many councils have acknowledged...
Sorry, Councillor Evans, you can't speak to that. I need... have you got the wording there? On
Council does not apply the cap increase to this year's budget.
So Councillor Evans is proposing an addition to this. So in addition to Councillor Gilbert's $100,000 hardship policy further assistance, Councillor Evans is putting in point 6. That would be that council doesn't increase by 2%. Is that correct, Councillor?
That's correct.
I'll need someone to second that amendment. Councillor Kirby seconding that amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Many councils have acknowledged that we are in the worst recession in this country's history. The adjoining councils of Geelong, Ballarat and Corangamite, among others, have not applied the cap, which is a 2% increase. Dandenong Council has decided to give all job seekers residents a $200 reduction in rates. Our package is heartless and an embarrassment. We offer a freeze on interest on unpaid rates until September. The interest we charge is 10%. So those who take up that offer will end up paying all of their rates plus the 10% after September. This is an interest rate a loan shark would be happy with. A CEO once told me that the Shire makes more money from late rate payers than we do with any of our investments. Let's contrast that with the rate we pay on our $10 million loan for the new showcase offices I'm sitting in now. That rate is 1.88%. All we have done is tie another knot into our lash for those who need our help. Some councillors may say we in Golden Plains Shire have a business as usual and have very few suffering. Clearly, I believe they are either in cotton wool or simply do not mix with those who are mostly affected. Before COVID, Golden Plains Shire had both a high level of mortgage stress as well as the highest level of family violence in the G21 councils. Let not risk compounding this and show understanding and compassion. Any saving in rates to anybody in this Shire will be spent here. They are our residents. Be it if they are in hardship or not, it will be spent here. Can we afford it? Yes. Just like we can afford fighting in world wars, we simply do things differently. For decades, this Shire has wasted millions through what I call financial mismanagement. Included in these are our childcare services, project budget blowouts, unfunded liabilities such as tip rehabilitation, the building of projects purely based on opportunity and not need, the car fleet policy, which 6 years ago was costing this Shire $230,000 more than it should have. It amazes me how quickly we seem to find hundreds of thousands of dollars to plug holes in this Shire in only the term that I have been here. We have been given the extra money as defined by the financial manager, $1.1 million to employ people affected by job losses, which will help us in our general service delivery in areas of engineering and other functions. We've also got the extra grant for infrastructure of $1.3 million. Yes, we can fund not only the budget freeze, but also target support in real terms to those who are brave enough to ask for it, because most people do not ask. We have to help them before they get to that point. Councillors, just close your eyes and imagine you woke up one day, possibly half your income, and you had no idea when that would improve. Could you carry on business as usual? Because that is exactly what Golden Plains Shire is trying to project with this budget. I fully support a lot of the initiatives in this budget. I think it's a very good budget. We've done a lot of work. But in this aspect, if we can't help our people today, when in the world will we ever have the guts to do it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for moving the amendment. I'm proud to second you on this amendment regarding the budget. I'd also like to thank the 9 submissions that were received. As an elected councillor, I believe that we have been listening to our ratepayers during this 1-in-a-100-year pandemic. Some residents in our shire have not been impacted and some businesses have been quite successful. But it is the unfortunate ones who have lost their jobs and businesses that have had to close their doors due to no fault of their own. For example, hotels, gift shops, dine-in shops, hairdressers, beauty salons, gymnasiums and schools. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And if you are still working in the front line, your health and well-being is appreciated by us all. The cashiers at the registers, the takeaway food delivery drivers, or doctors and hospital staff. As we head into the second wave, we do not know what the future holds. But we can be certain that a mere $40 savings on our rates can be a help to those less fortunate. So let us not increase the rate by 2%, but have a zero increase for our 2020 budget. Yes, there are residents who can still afford to pay the full amount, but if they could redirect their savings into either helping their neighbours by buying from a local business or employing a tradesperson for that odd job or buying online, means that we can keep our shire alive and prosperous. We are a growing peri-urban shire, and if the new residents decide to build here, they will know that we are a caring shire who put our residents first. I, for one, was very proactive in supporting the build of our new shire offices for a total spend of $10 million. With interest rates at their lowest, this savings can be made by helping our residents and being compassionate to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Anyone like to speak against the amendment? Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to say that a freeze on the rate cap, it may give a very small rebate to all the ratepayers. And I think we've already heard that it could be as little as $40 per rateable property. Now, a rate freeze on average, so it equates to that. I ask you, how is this $40 really going to support those who need the most support? Having $100,000 put aside for those who are doing it the hardest is about equity or equality. So equality, let's give everybody the same discount on their rates, even those who do not need it. Equity is helping those that need it the most, and they are entitled to more than $40 if that's what it means. They are entitled to a discount on their, or no interest on their rates. Let's give those that really need it the most, not those that don't.
Thank you. And just to be clear, Councillor Gilbert, the current motion includes both the 100,000 and the addition. So it is a 100. Yeah, both points. Just as a point of clarity. Anyone like to speak for the motion, the amendment? Anyone like to speak against it?
Chairman, I'd like to make a few comments, and I think that what's trying to achieve here is for us to look as though that we're doing everything for everybody, and that's a great thing. But at this point of time, there's people in this municipality that are able to pay their rates and they're doing probably reasonably well. As Councillor Gilbert has just said, this motion or the amendment that she proposed to the original recommendation gives people that are doing it hardest the most money. $40 is nothing to me or to people that are able to pay their rates, but people that can't pay, and the adjustment of the interest off their rate will allow them to pay off their rate without paying interest. And I think it's fairly important that they're not paying interest, they're able to work on their rate. Now, there'll be people in here in this category that are probably behind their rates year after year. This is an opportunity, I don't think any of this works, this is an opportunity for them to gain some ground. And I think while I can understand what Councillor Gilbert and Councillor Evans are right now, we have got to look at where we're going as a municipality and what we will lose with a rate freeze of 2%. It'll put us back about 5 or 6 years for the ongoing viability of this municipality, and I think it's a very retrograde step, because at the end of the day, as Councillor Gilbert has said, we are going to help the people that really need the help. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phelan. Anyone like to
Excuse me,
speak?
could I ask the question of Councillor Phelan?
So you've got a point of order, is it, Councillor Evans?
It's not a point of order, it's just a
No,
question.
we are in debate.
We are in debate, but a councillor can ask a question of a
No,
councillor
I
making a
can't.
statement.
You have the opportunity to close at the amendment, but now we are in debate, and I've had Councillor Phelan speaking against it. The amendment, is anyone like to speak for the amendment? Anyone like to speak against the amendment? Councillor Evans, I'll ask you to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Basically, the comments that have been said by Councillor Gilbert in regard to the 100,000 helping people. The real challenge we have here is that we are not actually going to give anybody a relief. All we're doing is saying to them, you are a debtor for us, we're just deferring it. That's all we're doing. Dandenong is actually taking $200 off people who are in a position of need. We are not doing that. We have no program whatsoever to do that. Councillor Phelan has spoken about the situation of the Shire going forward. The fundamentals are this Shire is a growth Shire. We have around about an average of 110 new properties coming into this Shire every year, with an average rate, and these are the higher priced properties, giving us over 300,000 extra rate through that growth. We are in an ideal situation to be able to carry forward and recover anything that we give up in compassion. Compassion is a very special word. And when we say the number of people out there who are struggling, we got a statistic back from the Department of Taxation and the number of people who are unemployed in the Shire. And everybody knows that figure is a very, very poor figure. And I saw in the ABC a reference to this particular figure of unemployment in Australia, which was running on their figures around about 7-8%. When they looked at the other people who are only working 1 hour, which qualifies them as employed, and then they also looked at the other thing, in Australia at this moment, the true figure is around 25%. Now, if people think that in our Shire we are a little piece of heaven in the middle of Australia in terms of this, then they're deluding themselves, and they need to wake up that the person next door might be struggling like crazy, and any compassion we can give, financially in any other way, may help that person not turn into a position of mental health, shooting themselves, going and stealing other people's gear just to keep their head above water. We want to stop that before help gets to that point. There is no way we will not succeed. Many shires are doing this. What is wrong? We are a growth shire. We can handle it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillors, I'll put the amended motion to a vote.
Yeah, can I just clarify that we are on the amendment
Correct.
Or
So if
this is just item 6, or are we talking about all 6 items?
yeah, so sorry, Councillor Hansard, just to be clear, we have one motion that's on the table by Councillor Gilbert. We now have an amendment to that motion, and we are voting on that. So if this motion passes, this will become the motion, and if this fails, then we will go back to the motion from Councillor Gilbert. So,
Thank you.
Which is now the substantive motion. That's right.
Put it to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment is failed, and I come back now to the original motion that was put by Councillor Gilbert, seconded by Councillor Rowe, and I will ask someone to speak against that motion. Councillor Evans speaking against the motion.
Situation with Councillor Gilbert's motion of $100,000, how is it possibly going to be directed as the poor people crawling across the plain out there? How is it going to happen? We have no policy whatsoever in relationship to helping anybody individually or collectively. All we have is that deferral of their interest rates. The $100,000 is a joke. It will not be handled well, and I think it's just a waste of time. Do it for all. Don't try to find the flies in the blooming ointment out there to try to put a little bit of honey on it. It just won't work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know it's said every year, but this is a very difficult budget. Council has been trimming fat from the budget for years and years. Under a rate cap, it's got even harder. But now we're at a point where we have to trim services to continue finding savings. Then we have the coronavirus that put the negative pressure on Council's finances. I know most of the debate around the table tonight has been about helping those in a corona or COVID negative situation that they find themselves in. And I believe putting $100,000 on the table to directly help those that are in need is a far better option than just giving everybody a very small discount across the whole Shire. Council's also spent a lot of time within this budget on the rating strategy to find the best balance for the community needs. We understand it's not a perfect budget, and it never is, and not every request can be met or group satisfied. But this budget will work for our communities and leave the council in a financial state into the next year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone like to speak for the motion?
I think, Mr Mayor, if I may, just adding further to what Councillor Hansford said, I think that what we're doing is giving not a $40 across the board relief to everybody. What we're doing here is going to help people that really need the help. $40 doesn't give those people that can't afford their rates any help at all. We are able to go ahead and give these people that relief. It'd be great if we had money and we could go on and retrieve the money we'd lose under a rate, not applying the cap. I think that we've got to be very... It'll never get to 420. So therefore, we are doing the right thing by the people that need it the most. And it's all right to talk about City of Ballarat and the City of Geelong and all these people who've done it. They have a lot bigger resource as far as finance is concerned than we have. And I think if you looked at the City of Ballarat, they've given a free ride, and then they're going to borrow $17 million. So doesn't that tell you something that where this can end up? And I just I fully endorse the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Gilbert, I'll ask you to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would just like to pick up on something Councillor Evans said, and he is correct that compassion is a very special word, and I am absolutely certain that what we are doing here tonight is trying to be compassionate to those that really, really need as much compassion as we can possibly find within ourselves and within as a council group. Councillor Rowe also indicated that the 2% rate cap, if we weren't to apply that we would lose $420,000. And as Councillor Phelan has just said, this could blow out to over $100,000. It could blow out to $150,000 if that's what we need to do. And if we need to go on supporting the freeze on interest rates past the end of JobKeeper, then that's what we'll do as well, and support them. The freeze on interest rates helps more than those who are affected by COVID-19. It actually helps and supports those that may already be suffering financial hardship. So you don't have to qualify. You're getting a freeze on your interest, and that is incredibly important. We don't know when COVID-19 is going to finish. We don't know how many other people in our community are going to suffer financial hardship in the next 6 or 12 months. We might find by next budget that we need to not apply a 2% rate increase then, because we just simply can't do it. But if we do that now, we're going to lose $420,000. We are going to have to cut services, and we wouldn't be able to afford to support with the $100,000 or $150,000. We have to take this action at this time. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Point of order, is it? So point 3 allocates $100,000 towards the COVID-19 hardship policy. So $100,000 is the motion there on the big screen.
It is just that two councillors have now specified $150,000.
The motion is $100,000 is allocated.
Thank you.
I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Those against the motion?
Call for a division, please, Mr Mayor.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Gilbert. Those in favour of the budget: Councillor Hansford, Councillor Phelan, Councillor Sharkey, Councillor Gilbert, Councillor Rowe. Those against the budget: Councillor Evans and Councillor Kirby. The motion is carried. Councillors, I'd like to take a few moments just to reflect on this budget process as the Mayor. Without doubt, this is one of the biggest processes that we undertake, and one that deserves additional commentary. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of those that made a public submission, and in particular those that have done so over previous years, and those that made the additional effort to publicly speak to their submission under unusual circumstances. I, for one, and for many years, made public submissions along with many others. In 1 year, I was one of 65 submitters, and no change was made to that budget. I wondered if I was ever listened to. I can sit here as the Mayor and honestly say that every submission was given consideration, and the CEO and officers supplied us with all the information to make informed decisions. I've personally sat with the CEO, the financial team, and even the rates officer, Kim, who has to field the many calls from residents seeking assistance, not only because of COVID, but every year. I am proud to also support this budget, and I note that our message during COVID has been to be kind. And without doubt, the echoed message with the submissions received this year was that we need to be kind. I know many people are doing it hard. Many residents have lost their jobs, and I strongly agree that we need to be kind and compassionate to those that need it the most.
You're trying to be kind, you haven't given them anything at all.
So, Councillor Evans, point of order. You're speaking. No point of order. As a council, we only have a few tools available for us to use with rates. Using a blunt tool like a 2% reduction gives more help to those that are fortunate enough to have high-valued properties. It should also be noted, as other councillors noted, that the biggest difference made to our rates is the rating review conducted this year. This review built on the work undertaken last year, where we worked on making the system fairer and to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share, increasing the base rate paid by every household to $300, the municipal charge. so that less of the rates payment is subject to changes in property valuations. This approach ensured that all ratepayers contribute a higher minimum amount and less revenue will be contributed from a property valuation based on the rating system. And this has reduced rate shock. Our farmers will receive relief in the rate in the dollar. Businesses in our main growth hub will take a hit on rates with an increase in charge. However, we recognise that the increase in the municipal charge last year actually provided those businesses with a benefit in their rates. Farms under 40 hectares that are used for residential purposes and not farming will be charged 100% to the rate in the dollar, like all other residential properties. We have removed growth rates, which means every resident in the Shire will be charged the same rate in the dollar, regardless of where they live. As we recognised, the value of your property already takes into account that you live in a growth area. We haven't solved every problem, and it is something that needs reviewing constantly. But we have listened, and I'm proud that we have made the changes that was a large part of why some of us were elected. It's easy to make decisions from the sidelines or from a pizza shop, but it's far harder to read thousands of pages and put in countless hours to make sure you are making the right decisions. And most councillors in this room do exactly that. Lastly, I would like to thank the CEO for supplying us with all the tools and information to make an informed decision. I'd like to thank the directors, and in particular the finance team headed by Director O'Sullivan, and also echo many submitters' acknowledgement of the responses received by the Financial Manager, Fiona Ray. On this subject, I would like to acknowledge the work that council officers have done throughout the past few months to continue offering council's services to the community. Many people will be unaware that during this COVID period, the council's CEO management team did forego their entitled leave and worked extra days every week. In addition, many officers also took leave, and some took unpaid leave to support the budget and the organisation during this difficult period. I believe that it's important to recognise this team effort by the council staff, and I would like to say thank you. As a ratepayer and a mayor, I thank all those that have contributed to this process, and I look forward to the benefits that this budget will give to our 56 communities across the Shire. Item 7.4, the final draft waste strategy. Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. By way of background, Council undertook a community engagement process during September and October of 2019 through the establishment of a community panel and customer survey. The purpose of this engagement process was to provide councillors with sufficient information as to which of the identified 5 options, subject to the engagement, the community supported. The aim is for an improved service to be implemented in 2022, enabling inclusion of the service in the next waste contract. The 5 options subject are listed on page 19 of the agenda, with options 1 and 2 attracting the most votes, being 51.5% and 53.1% respectively. The outcomes of the survey have informed the development of the draft waste and resource recovery strategy, which is attached under separate cover to your agenda. This strategy has been developed to plan Council's waste management services to meet the needs of its residents and contribute to Council plan outcomes. It also considers the reforms announced by the State Government in February 2020, titled Recycling in Victoria, a New Economy. The next phase of consultation is the exhibition and advertisement of the strategy for public comment through an online submission process before coming back to Council for adoption. The recommendation before you tonight is that endorse the draft waste resource recovery strategy for public exhibition.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any discussion or questions? Anyone like to move a motion? Moving the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Seconding the motion, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Gilbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sorry, I'd just like to say that this has been perhaps a long time coming, this strategy, so it will go out to the public. We'll see what they think. Initially, this should have gone out way before now due to, obviously, some of the COVID-19 restrictions. We chose to hold it back a second time after we've had some difficulties with the recycling issue that affected the entire state and country as well. So let's see what the public think and we'll take that on board from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Phelan.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think that the public consultation is going to be a very important part of this when it comes to green waste and things like that, because we don't know where it's going to land. And I think that if the public are involved, we probably get a good outcome. But I think that the problems with this waste system over the next few years, and this is probably the...
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Evans.
Yeah, look, it's only a starting document, nothing more. There's a lot of work to go forward, and a lot of the systems that we're going out to the community possibly suggesting may work will need a lot of work in other areas, particularly state government input into what will be required. There might be some interesting legislation come out that might actually push it on a path that we must maintain, but as it is at the moment, it's very, very in infantry. Thank you.
Councillor Evans. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Gilbert, would you like to close or put it to a vote?
I will just say we have also already gathered some information from the community in relation to green waste and that sort of thing in the shape of a survey done through the Gazette. So hopefully those that didn't get to contribute last time will be able to contribute now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilbert. With that being said, I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 7.5, 46 Squires Road, Teesdale, 3-lot subdivision. Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report relates to a planning permit application for the development of land for the purposes of a 3-lot subdivision at 46 Squires Road in Teesdale. The application has been referred to Council for determination because 3 objections have been received. The report provides a background to the application and a summary of the relevant planning considerations. The councillors have been provided with a full copy of the application and objections for consideration prior to making a decision. Objectors' concerns are summarised on page 25 and 26 of tonight's agenda. The application has been assessed against the Golden Plains planning scheme and referred to Barwon Water and Powercor as well as internally to Council's Works Department. As a result, permit conditions have been drafted and are attached to the report. The application satisfies the provisions of the planning scheme, including state and local planning policies, particularly the local policy for low-density residential development, the provisions of the low-density residential zone and the decision guidelines of the planning scheme. The proposed subdivision has been designed to maintain the character of the area, and the proposed lots are considered to be capable of on-site effluent disposal. Permit conditions requiring landscaping, a restriction on single-storey development and the provision of drainage infrastructure will ensure that the issue of a permit does not cause material detriment to any person. It is recommended that Council resolves to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for a 3-lot subdivision at 46 Squires Road, Teesdale, subject to the conditions attached to the report.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any discussion or questions? Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In condition 15, we speak about the driveway, the crossover into the property. We spoke briefly, I think, at our briefing day about the wording of crushed rock. I noticed that's still in there. We have the seal part of it, but it actually still says crushed rock. And if nothing else, I think provides a bit of uncertainty on what should be there.
The intent of that condition is to have I think from memory, a 5-metre wide crushed rock base with a 3.5 metre seal. So effectively you'll have a seal with shoulders either side of the driveway.
Thank you for that. It probably doesn't explicitly explain that in the condition. So maybe.
I'll make sure we have a look at that condition 15 and clarify if required.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
The question too, following on Councillor Hansford's, the interesting thing is we made in 15A that we have the seal from the edge of the road to the property boundary. I believe down further we go into the seal going into the property per se. Why did we differentiate those two statements rather than just say the access is to be sealed from the road to the final property boundary of the last block? Would that be a better way of probably framing it?
We separated basically because one condition talks about the crossover that's in the road reserve, which is effectively council property and council managed land. The next part of it is common property, and the condition relates to the driveway and the common property. Could we combine the two? Possibly, to make it a little bit neater, but by separating it, it kind of differentiates exactly who's responsible for what post the development in terms of maintaining and keeping it up, keeping it in order.
If I could follow on that. The fact that crossing the council property is to be sealed, now does that, as with any subdivision, become a part of council's maintenance program, or?
Not driveways. Driveways are usually the responsibility of the property owners who benefit from the driveway.
Be stated?
Not as a condition, but that's just the general legal position for all councils.
Now, the other thing is when we have these entrances onto our council road, with a lot of our crossovers, they come on, we have generally about a 4.5 metre wide crossover that T-junctions our road, but everybody knows you do a bit of a turn in either side. I wonder if we could probably look at something like that, if not here or in the future, as a standard policy, because if you see anybody's drive, now let's be honest here, any intersection that is sealed as a T intersection, the seal is always broken by people cutting the corner. And we are now having a situation where a sealed drive is coming out T intersection to the road. Shouldn't it be actually curved so that it blends in, so that we don't have that maintenance problem? Because if they chew up their new sealed entrance, what's the likelihood of they fixing that? Because people don't have a bitumen mixer in their backyard. It's just something that we probably need to be a little bit more proactive with.
There's a couple of things we can do. One is, you mentioned the word policy. I think we need to work up a policy on sealing of driveways, etc. Because whilst it's a council position, I don't believe it's a policy at this stage, but working on that. But the other thing we're also doing is we're looking at developing up some good design guidelines for development across the Shire. We were planning on doing it for just Teesdale, but we thought there's a broader application to that particular design guideline, which talks about 2 or 3 lot subdivisions, access and all those sorts of things. So definitely we can take that on board and think about what's the best way to put that in writing so we've got a reference point.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the guidelines for crossovers with different size vehicles, particularly trucks, it already has that defined entrance curve and things like that.
I'll have to take that on notice because I'm not sure what our infrastructure...
The Vic Road one that I think we use as a reference document.
Vic Roads, did you say? Sorry. I'll have to take that on notice because I know we refer to our infrastructure design manual for the subdivisions, and they're usually designed for passenger vehicles and light vehicles, not necessarily semi-trailers, etc. Unless people have a specific need to park because that's their business kind of thing. But I'll take that on notice. But the requirements of crossovers are within our infrastructure design manual, and that's our point of reference at this stage.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further questions? I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans.
Fundamentally, these things are becoming kind of usual, that we're adopting these ones. The biggest concern is that we always get objections to it, and we must deal with it in council, and I always will recommend that. The situation is that usually with the objectors, they tend to object with things that could happen in the future, and I think that's the area that we probably have to tidy up in these battle axe type of developments, particularly with drainage ramifications, which will have may not have an effect immediately, but when you get multiple properties doing it, there will be a collective kind of effect there, and we have to kind of address that. And I don't think we're doing it well at the moment, and I would like to see some more work in that space. But it's very awkward. And the other thing too is allocating the driveway as part of the allotment size, which is another thing that does need review by the Shire, because it's not can't be considered part of the effluent fielding or anything like that. So and again, that's another issue of concern, but hopefully we can workshop some policy to try to address this. And we're not the only Shire that has a problem with these. So other than that, I can't say any more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Hansford.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone like to speak against the motion? I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.6, Active Regional Sport and Active Recreation Strategy. Director Latik.
Mr Mayor, councillors, this report seeks council's endorsement of the Activate 2020 to 2030 10-year regional strategy. The strategy enables a coordinated and collaborative approach across the Central Highlands and Grampians Pyrenees region. 4 strategic priorities aimed at increasing participation in sport and active recreation were identified through the creation of the strategy, with a number of high-level actions under each of the strategies prioritised to be developed and in a localised approach. These are working together, activating places and spaces, creating quality places and places, community cohesion through sport and active recreation. The vision articulated in the strategy and designed through extensive community consultation is Central Highlands and Grampians Pyrenees communities are the most active, healthy and livable in Victoria. In relation to Golden Plains, there's a number of priorities and strategic facilities that have been identified. The 2020 infrastructure priorities articulated in the plan are Inverleigh Change Room upgrade, Bannockburn Soccer Facility, Bannockburn Skate Park upgrade, Linton Cricket Net and the Living Mirrabul Trail, amongst other initiatives. The strategy aligns with the Golden Plains Council plan through the following areas, both promoting health and connected communities and managing the natural and built environment. Councillors, this report recommendation is that Council note and endorse the Central Highlands and Grampians Pyrenees Regional Sport and Active Recreation Strategy, Activate 2020-2030.
Thank you very much, Director Latik. Councillors, any questions? Discussion? Councillor Kirby.
Mayor, the Living Mirrabul Trail on page 47. Even though this project has been in Council's strategic resource plan, it is not shovel ready. One project that is, and should have been included, is the Ropewood Recreation Reserve upgrade, which already has money allocated, but still requires a further $500,000 to upgrade this facility. As we know from studies, it is the worst football ground, not football ground, but worst facilities within the Geelong region and the Central Highlands region. And I just think that the Mirrabul Trail is a great project for the future, but at this time it is not shovel ready and it should not be in this plan. Thank you.
Councillor Kirby, this is a moment for questions or discussion.
Right.
Is there a question directed to one of the directors in there?
Yes, thank you. So do we really think it should be in there when there is no costings and it is not shovel ready at this time?
It has been identified as a priority through Council's priority identified projects. We are continuing to work on developing those, the plans and the costs associated with the development of the plan. It has been identified over the Rokewood priority. We understand that the Rokewood community have expressed that they're not interested in developing the more formalised community facility beyond immediate extensions. So we've done a number of works in Rokewood, including lighting and working with that group around some of the septic upgrades. But in terms of community facility, the most recent feedback that we've had was that they're not going to pursue that particular project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further questions?
Well, I could probably reinforce Councillor Kirby's opinion on Rokewood. We had a very interesting program on, what was it, what they call it? Backroads last night on Rokewood. And it was extremely surprising to me how involved that community is in that recreational reserve. Now, over the years, I've always given a bit of stick to Rokewood with what they get. And looking at that program and the passion out there, I think I have been given a bit of bad press to improving the situation there. And I see that as a community that is thoroughly successful in utilising their facility to the degree that they have at all levels.
Councillor Evans, is there a question or discussion? Well, you sounds like you're speaking to the motion, so...
I basically am, but the question is...
Yeah, well, you basically can't at this stage. This moment is for questions or discussion. If you'd like to move the motion, I'm happy to accept you to move the motion, and I'm happy to hear what you've got to say on that. With that, would you like to move the motion, Councillor Evans? And then you have the opportunity to do so. But this is a time for discussion or...
That's fine.
Question.
I'll let somebody out move it.
I'll look for someone to move if there's no further questions. Councillor Gilbert moving the motion. Councillor Hansard seconding the motion. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is one of those documents that's a bit of an overarching document. And out of that, there are other documents that come out of it where we hopefully get costings for things and we can do some of those other projects. And if there is a project in Rokewood, I too saw that show last night and was mightily impressed by the community, and I think they need a bit of a plug tonight. So if there's something in Rokewood that's shovel ready to go, great. If not, well, we'll find something else like the trail maybe. But this is an overarching document and it's a good one. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Hansard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just basically would like to say that this is a 10-year overarching strategy. It's not something that is pinpoints particular projects that we're going to start next week. So just wish to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansard. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.7, the Draft Sport and Active Recreation Strategy 2020 to 2030. Again, Director Latik.
Thank you. Councillors, this report's, we're really pleased to be able to present this to you. This is the Golden Plains Sport and Recreation Strategy. It obviously aligns very strongly to the regional sport and recreation strategy, and the timing is also 2020 to 2030. This report seeks Council's endorsement for the release of the draft strategy for public exhibition for a period of 4 weeks, where we hope that we get more community engagement and feedback on the strategy. Councillors partner with Sport and Recreation Victoria to fund the development of the strategy, and the vision articulated with the community is active, connected and livable communities through sport and active recreation. There's 3 core pillars that will guide the Shire and the community when considering implementing new programs and developing and upgrading facilities. And these pillars are active and helping, which focuses on participation, programming, diversity and inclusion. Livability, which focuses on places and spaces and quality environments. And the third pillar is connectedness, focuses on community cohesion through sport active recreation, volunteers, gender equity and inclusion. Again, very strong relationship between this strategy and the council plan, and there's a lot of work in the detailed action plan about some of the priorities over the next 10-year period, and a lot of that is around policy and some of those things that will inform council's decision making into the future. The recommendation is that council endorse the release of the draft sport and active recreation strategy 2020 to 2030 for public exhibition for a period of 4 weeks.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans.
Through you, the Mayor. The situation with this strategy is that we're basically trying to get more health and wellbeing into our communities, but we also know that we're very stretched financially to be able to put infrastructure on the ground. My question is, are you looking at being able to provide more engagement opportunities rather than to put more cash requirements into the Shire for facilities? Can we, with our staff, create a centre for managing the facilities that we have within this framework going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The action plan certainly identifies quite a number of activities and policy development that will absolutely do that. It will look at better usage of our existing community infrastructure rather than continuing to build new infrastructure. Whilst there is a place for the building of new infrastructure and the further development of our existing infrastructure based on need, what this strategy is strongly saying is that before making those decisions, ensuring that there's strong policy in place and a strong evidence base, understanding the needs of the community and the aspirations of the community before those decisions are made. It also talks about a strong partnership with community sporting clubs to help them to increase their participation rates, and if there's a group occupying a community facility, actually having some accountability around their increased utilisation and increased engagement with the community, particularly with cohorts such as female participation. So yes, it absolutely does that, with probably a lesser degree and reliance on new and increased infrastructure demand.
If I could ask another question through you, the Mayor. The situation in Golden Plains is we have the high participation rate basically in the state. I think it's about 58%. Do you actually know what would be an achievable participation rate that in an ideal situation would happen as a target?
Very good question. Certainly, benchmarks and targets, we would love to see everyone participating in healthy lifestyles and active and sports and recreation. We know there's significant evidence that means that people can participate more readily in the workforce and in community if they're healthy, active, socially connected and engaged. So this strategy goes beyond those participating in formalised sports. So short answer is no, I don't have a figure as such, but any increase is a good increase.
Any further questions? Councillor Kirby.
In our Shire, we have some really great stadiums and halls which are totally underutilised. In this report, it doesn't mention anything about hiring a stadium manager or a hall manager. It has outside groups come in, but in the past, it has not worked. We have not seen outside groups come in besides the YMCA running the stadium in Bannockburn. So I'm talking about some of the other areas, example, Linton, Smythesdale, even the centre of the Shire, even though we don't have any great facilities, just a few small halls. So these managers could run other programs, especially for girls, and especially promoting This Girl Can. We don't do enough in the centre of the Shire, especially for dancing, gymnastics, anything like that girls could take up. So I'm just hoping that...
Councillor Kirby, sorry, Councillor Kirby, I'll just pull you up.
I am asking a question.
You're speaking to a motion, and you're giving your.
I'm actually asking the
Councillor
question
Kirby,
on that question.
Councillor Kirby, you're giving your personal opinion. This is a time. You just said I feel that.
No,
this is a moment for
I'm
asking.
just saying that this is not in the report, and I'd just like to acknowledge that all the girls, a lot of the girls and children out there, or young adults any age, this is a very important thing that we have not identified in this report. So I'm trying to ask if this could please come through, and other people within our communities.
Councillor Kirby, just one moment. I don't disagree with what you're saying, and what you're saying is very valid, but it is part of speaking for or against the motion. This is a moment of asking a question to the report. What you've said is better left to be said during speaking for or against.
Well, I'm just asking the question if that can be identified in the study, please, in the report before it goes out to the public. Thank you.
Director Latika, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One of the policy priorities in the document is to develop policies to ensure sustainable development, management, operation and renewal of programming services and infrastructure. So it's certainly from a strategic perspective, it addresses your concerns.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, councillors? I'll seek someone. Councillor Hansford moving the motion. Anyone seeking someone to second the motion? Seconding the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In very trying times, I'm pleased that this strategy in this form is ready to go out to the public for comment. A lot of work has gone into the strategy, and we'll commend officers' hard work. A solid plan or strategy will ensure matching grants to realise these projects. This will hopefully show our communities that council supports them in good times and also tough. Once out of this period of lockdown, I believe community involvement in sporting pursuits and active rec will be the biggest contributor to rebuilding our lives back to some normality. Happy to move this motion and encourage others to support it. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I follow on from Councillor Hansford and agree that hopefully when we come out of this period of lockdown, some of these sporting activities and wonderful resources in our Shire are fully embraced, and I look forward to seeing that, and it's a great document. Let's see what the public thinks.
Very much, Councillor Gilbert. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Kirby.
Mr Mayor, page 30, item 2, the Teesdale Bannockburn walking cycling path. They had 13% of respondents have asked for this as a priority. However, this has been on the Teesdale community plan for 12 years. Do we or will we have timelines and costings for the projects outlined in this document so that these communities can move ahead, like a lot of other projects around the Shire? Thank you.
Very much. Anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Evans speaking for the motion.
This is a no-brainer of health and well-being, but one of the things that we have to be very cautious of when these type of documents go out to a public is that the public desire to be able to throw too many things into our basket of wishes. We as councillors have to be very cautious of how we manage that, and particularly the staff. And that is the challenge when we make these type of broad strategies, because too many very, very small groups all think that they need to have something that is tailored to them, and we have to make sure that we can actually even contemplate putting it into our strategy going forward. We need to have a threshold. And I don't think we really have a threshold. And if you're looking at a staff member who's coordinating a small group of, say, 3 people, we'll go broke. So, you know, how we kind of manage that is important. So, and these are the dangers when we go out to our communities with these type of things. because the range of options that were thrown by some of the kids, they're imaginative little buggers, but by God, there's no way we could do it unless we had, what is it, that land they have over in LA, you know, Disneyland. Or it's incredible. Thank you.
Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Hansford, I'll ask you to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I probably said all I wanted to say before, and just happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Item 7.8, the review and amend Local Law Number 2, General Public Amenity Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Since Council adopted Local Law Number 2 on 24th of January 2017, I've got 27 here, which is wrong, sorry. New and emerging issues have been identified in this fast-growing shire, and this report seeks approval to commence proceedings for reviewing the local law to address the identified issues. Reviewing, amending or replacing a local law before the end of the sunset date, which is 10 years after its adoption, is not uncommon within local government. Certain sections of our local law have been identified as being difficult to interpret and enforce, and new emerging issues not fully covered in the local law have been identified. These issues are summarised on page 41 and 42 of tonight's agenda. Amendments would assist the community and officers in their understanding of the local law and further protect the amenity of the Golden Plains Shire community. The process of amending the local law is included in the table shown on page 42 and 43. The process includes an internal officer review, a councillor workshop, and then a legal review of a redrafted local law. The redrafted local law will be the subject of a future council report before commencing a public consultation process calling for submissions, including the option for community members to speak to council in support of their submissions. Amendments following public consultation will be undertaken, and a final draft of the local law will be presented to a future council meeting for adoption. The report recommends that council commence proceedings to review and amend or replace Local Law Number 2, General Public Amenity.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans.
With the councillor workshop on this, this is a pretty big document, and there's a lot of recommendations. I had a meeting with the couple of your officers, and I had a few issues, but there was more that actually were highlighted by your officers clearly around the issues of management. Now, with that, what I would see, we need a significant amount of time to do this properly. So what type of timescale were you intending to do in this workshop?
The workshop itself, we were envisaging around about a 4-hour workshop. That's what we were thinking. But we've got a date in mind, but we haven't actually scheduled it until council give us the okay through tonight's recommendation.
I think that'd be probably more than adequate. Thank you.
Any further questions before I ask Councillor Hansford to move the motion? Moving the motion, Councillor Hansford. Seconding the motion, Councillor Evans seconding the motion. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As our Director has just said, that this is really just the first step, formalises the process to have a look at this law, and there have been a number of anomalies identified, and let's get the process rolling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans seconding the motion.
Yeah, look, looking at this again would be really good. I've been waiting for the opportunity for 3 years to have a crack at this one, and I think there's a lot of new stuff that is appropriate to be looked at now. The other issue is a lot of things that are clearly actually we cannot actually enforce a lot of stuff because it's really is nearly unenforceable, and we need to kind of be rational. And when we look at the Act, things should not be made unless they can be enforced. The other issue is looking at the way local laws are put together, and the accompanying documents per law are actually very informative, and it's one thing that we probably lack in terms of having an auxiliary library beside our document on our webpage, so that any resident who actually is concerned about a particular law can actually see the rationale why we decided to do it. And that can actually probably remove some of the angst that people have, because they don't actually understand why did we do that. Are they being biased or whatever? And those type of accompanying documents should be part of our review, and it should also be transparent and available as it's legislated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With nobody speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.9, the update on councillor conversation post program. Mr CEO.
Councillors, as you're aware, over the last couple of years, we've hosted councillor conversation posts. For the most part, quite successful in that the councillors have been able to get out and about within the community and speak to them about what concerns or issues or things that they feel the councillor is doing well. Unfortunately, Council over the last 3 months has not been able to exercise that program. You had asked us to plan for conversation posts in April, May and June this year, but unfortunately because of COVID we have not been able to fulfill that recommendation. So as a result, we do need a motion approved by Council, a resolution of Council, acknowledging why we didn't carry out that action. But in the same part, we've also suggested that Council may wish to acknowledge the success of the program over the last couple of years and hope and encourage the next Council to continue something the same into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr CEO. Councillors, any questions? Seek a mover if there's no questions. Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Evans.
I think it's just housekeeping at the moment. I don't think our conversations post have gone as well as they should. Hopefully in the future they can go better, but this is just housekeeping at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Gilbert. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Speaking against the motion, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm just a little bit disappointed that we did not have an online conversation post with our residents, especially when everyone at the moment is at home. We're on Zoom, we're on all sorts of other different types of communication. And I think we are elected to this position, and I think at the same time we're adults and we should be able to speak to our public in a different format besides face-to-face. Thank you.
Anyone like to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Evans, I'll ask you to close.
I see what Councillor Kirby is talking about with the online. In a sense, it would be lovely if it would work. I don't know how engaging it would be and how it would function. But in light of what is happening with the Zoom and everything else that we've been going through, and let's face it, there's been a few of us who have been total dinosaurs in that space, and we've actually been able to manage it. So it may have merit. So I think something of consideration, if not, probably not for this council, but definitely for further councils. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried unanimously. Item 7.10, Community Satisfaction Survey 2020, report findings. Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Each year, the local government, Victoria, coordinates the statewide local government community satisfaction survey throughout the Victorian local government areas. The survey was conducted over the period from 1 February to 30th of March 2020. And this year, the council has requested an additional geographic region to be added on top of the north and south, and the central area was also surveyed. Overall, the perceptions of the council's overall performance was unchanged from 2019. However, I will refer to the CEO just to add some additional comments around the results.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Mr CEO.
Councillors, we present this report to you each and every year, and it's been going on for probably decades now, where councils across the state of Victoria are obligated to undertake the community satisfaction surveys. We do strive each and every year to try to make a difference to the results that the community sees of council. This year, I do admit it was extremely frustrating to see that our the satisfaction survey didn't move in the direction we would have hoped, especially in the areas where we put a concerted effort into making a difference. A number of those areas include councillor lobbying and advocacy, because we've done a lot more of that over the last 12 months, or at least we've promoted it a lot more. Councillors being active and engaged within the community, and we just went through the councillor conversation post. Again, another means where we tried to get out to the community to listen to their comments and concerns. And the last, which is extremely frustrating, is last year we put the most amount of money we've ever spent in terms of infrastructure. So we stopped doing a number of other things. We directed as much money as we possibly could into our infrastructure renewal program, and the results in our sealed roads have gone down significantly. I'm not sure what much more we can do in this space. With the limited amounts of funds we have, we try to spread ourselves as much as we possibly can across the whole of the Shire and deliver as much as we can to the whole of the community. But this year, to see the results go down in our sealed road program, it's extremely frustrating. And now, look, I'm not making excuses. I suspect a lot of the comments will still relate to Vic Roads managed roads, where unfortunately we don't control. We can continue to advocate and lobby for towards Vic Roads, or our Rural Roads Victoria now, to improve and deliver more of their maintenance program and upgrade. But again, the community still sees all roads as being council roads. But that being said, as I said, it is disappointing. But across the state, we have seen in this particular year a number of councils, especially those in the rural communities, and in our case, the peri-urban communities, where we're seeing an influx of urbanites, or people that are moving from particular urban areas, be it metropolitan Melbourne or City of Geelong, out into our community, with high expectations of what they see are being delivered in the urban areas, and expect to see the same in our rural community. And again, you know, it's going to be extremely hard for us into the future to meet the expectations of those communities. But no excuses. You know, we've got to go back and have a look at the results of those surveys, have a good look at the details of those, because we have been able to break it down into the north, the centre and the south, as well as the age group as a demographic. So we'll do a bit more work on that and come back to council later in the year and see what we can do to try to improve that result going forward. But I must admit it was extremely frustrating after the concerted effort and the amount of money redirected to our infrastructure renewal program to see the particular outcome in the roads program.
Very much, Mr CEO. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to our CEO. Perhaps there's a resource we could provide online that has my apologies.
Resource provide online on our webpage that has a list of our roads and Vic Roads roads, so that, you know, maybe it flags for people to go and have a look and see whose responsibility a particular road is.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and it might be something we do through the Gazette, that throughout the next 12 months we highlight in each of the north, centre and south a map that highlights the Vic Roads roads and the council roads and just reinforce that. And we'll continue to ask the community when they are driving, if they do see a pothole or there's the edge of the seal is coming undone, to make sure they do contact us. And then we can at least at customer service say, that's a Vic Roads road, here's the number, and let them register those complaints and continue to reinforce that message with the Rural Roads Victoria. And again, now that we've got a new Minister for Roads, we'll have to take that up with that Minister once he gets settled into that role.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Rowe.
We need to, it's all very well to say some of our sealed local roads, especially in the central part of the Shire and up to scratch. We need to identify some of these sealed local roads and find out for sure which ones they actually are moving forward. That was all. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
I do believe that through that process, a lot of people actually asked what road that was affected.
Yeah, there was a question that allowed them to respond with what road in the verbatim comments at the end of the survey, and that's at the end of the attachment. A lot of them didn't actually identify the particular roads, so that doesn't help us in a lot of the cases. But where they do identify them, we can go back and identify if they're ours, obviously, or a Vic Roads road. But we do need to encourage and continually across, the officers as well as the councillors, when community are concerned with roads, to make sure we make clear if they are ours or Vic Roads. But yeah, unfortunately, for the average person, they're not really concerned who's managing it. They just want them fixed.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Kirby.
Yes, Mr. Breslin, I'd just like to thank you for putting the questions together this year. I think having a centre in the Shire as well as a north and a south has also demonstrated where some of our problem areas are, and it is a big Shire, so to actually have the centre acknowledged is great for all our residents.
Councillor Kirby, just again, this is a moment of questions or discussion. You're speaking for the motion. If you'd like to speak for the motion, make those comments need to be contained within moving or seconding the motion or speaking for or against. This is a moment for questions to the relevant officer. Any further questions? Councillor Evans.
This is directed through the chair to the CEO. The situation is that we are consistently getting poor results. Now, what I'm asking you is, in any particular area that consistently gets poor results, what activities are we working on specifically to improve that? And this can be in the customer service, consultation. Lobbying is something way off to the side. Sealed roads, things like that can be kind of debated later. But how do you structure your teams of people who are responsible for our consistent level of score that just does not improve? How do you manage to, or what are you doing to do that, get a better result?
Agree, Mr. Mayor, and I think it is a good question, and we do need to also appreciate this is a survey of a couple hundred people, and it's not necessarily completely reflective on the attitudes of all our Shire. But I do appreciate we do need to look at the areas where we have either gone down or haven't improved. Customer service is a good one where it continues to be recognised as an area where our community sees we're doing really well. I think last year or the year before, the issue of rural roads was a concern. So when that was identified, we went back, we looked at the structure of our grading team, we created 3 teams and divided them across particular areas. We instigated a rural road charter that we've now got up on our website. It changed the way we delivered the service. So I think that's a really good example where we took the feedback, we changed the way we deliver the service, and I suspect that over the coming years you'll see that number continue to increase. But we do need to take the results this year, and this year the worst obviously is the sealed road program, and we'll have to think of ways and means to better utilize our teams, because we don't have any more money, so we're going to have to just look at better ways of trying to deliver the service differently, and also recognise, as we just said, to identify which roads are ours and which are Vic roads. But we do need to use this feedback to try to review how we're delivering our services and where we may be able to change the ways we do it.
If I could follow up on that, the customer service one, like we have some very good officers in there, and I'm happy to say when I go in there with the front desk staff, they are absolutely brilliant auditors and whatever. With customer service, if everybody is just being pleasant to the person who is contacting them, I can't see how we can't have a virtually 100% score on that. They may not agree with what they're told, but if the service is, fully comprehensive, pleasant, and I have no doubt that most of our officers are very pleasant, I just cannot see how we just keep lingering around that spot. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Phelan?
Just a couple. With the gravel roads and the sealed roads, like it's all right for the survey to say, ask the question what you think of them, but you've really got to identify what's wrong with them, because it may be shoulder work, it may be potholes, or it may be also gravel roads. This year's been really good because it's rained during the summer. In a dry summer, you'll get a lot more trouble. So therefore, I think it's all right for people to criticise what you do, but at the end of the day, they should identify what it is so you can fix it. You don't know what we don't know from this survey what's wrong with our sealed local roads.
I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Hansford. Seconding the motion, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The raw data does look unfavourable to council when you compare it with other years. We had a recent briefing session. It was explained to us that right across the state, satisfaction numbers fell. It was explained that numbers, if steady, were good, and slight falls were more than acceptable when sort of comparing across the state. A general mindset of surveyed people was highlighted as a possible contributor. We had COVID, but you can sort of say that this survey was before then, and we have to look then at the debilitating fires we had right across the state. And then at the end of last year and prior to that also, we had a steady decline in economic sentiment and outlook. So I think if you can bind those few things with maybe not doing overly well in some areas, I think it can be partially explained that we're not absolutely on the wrong track. We may not be perfectly on the right track, but certainly comparing to other shires, we have done quite well in some areas. So, happy to take the report and happy to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Phelan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that the issue is it doesn't matter what area of local government in, there's always people out there that want to criticise you. And it's a really hard road to fix up because you've charged them rates and then it's not being spent where they want it. So to get a big tick is going to be a lot of work. But when we've got 1,700 kilometres of unsealed roads and only 4 graders, it's a big opportunity. And if you look through the thing, most of the people it's all about roads because that's what they use every day of the week. So therefore, and it's a really hard job because as soon as they run over a pothole, there's an issue. So if they're rung up for a survey, they're going to give you the thumbs down. And I think you can try as hard as you like and spend as much money as you like, but until all the roads are sealed, you're always going to get a negative result.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With nobody speaking against the motion, Councillor Rowe.
I just wonder, with your sealed local roads dropping down so far, is there any correlation with that as far as repairing the potholes in the seal with that jet patcher, that we're not just squirting the bitumen in there and the next truck comes along and tears it out of the asphalt? So I think that may need a look at, to be honest with you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Evans.
I think the situation with the roads is going to be a little bit interesting in this survey because we only approved a new road charter this year. Now, the new road charter, in my opinion, is going to make a dramatic improvement in the way we deal with all our roads in the Shire. And the benefits of that will probably reflect in maybe next year's survey. So I would expect, and I'd be very disappointed if it didn't happen. My main concern is the other areas where we just seem to be failing consistently on and off all the time. And we need to focus more on those aspects. Essentially, I don't think it was totally fair on the roads, but we do know we are a long way behind. We know we have a $6 million asset deficit accumulating yearly on our roads and bridges, and with that we have no hope of catching that runaway horse. But we are working constructively with this road charter that unfortunately this Shire went for too long without. And the ramifications of that is those guys out there are trying to catch up on poor behaviour and methods of maintenance that has been existing for years, and it will take a while for them to be able to get it. The fact that we now have 4 graders, 4 guys allocated 4 sections of the Shire who are now taking ownership of those sections is going to make a dramatic change. They're going to be pride and far better receptiveness to complaints. So there is some light, but it's sure ain't showing up on this survey at the moment. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Evans. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Speaking against the motion, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a couple of areas that we really need to look at for the coming years. One is the community consultation, which has had a 12% of the residents commented on that. Waste management, well, we're dealing with that at the moment. And rates too expensive. So we really got to start looking at this, looking at what our ratepayers are saying. But on the other hand, the top mentions was recreational and sporting facilities, 14%. So that really overrides some of the other areas in the Shire. And parks and gardens. So we know that the residents really take care and appreciate what our council staff do in those spaces, especially looking after them, maintaining and mowing. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Hansford, would you like to close?
I've said all I need to say. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll put it to vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Item 7.11, the Panel of Suppliers General Maintenance Services, Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council has historically utilised several local suppliers for these services on an ad hoc basis. Due to the cumulative sum of these works, Council has decided to create a trade panel for general maintenance services to ensure uniformity of work, greater value for money and procurement processes are fully satisfied. A tender was advertised for a panel of suppliers for the general maintenance services. 12 tenders were received, and this report seeks to appoint 4 contractors to the general maintenance service panel for an initial term of 2 years with a 1-year option at Council's discretion. The 4 recommended contractors have been assessed as providing best value for money to Council. I also just wanted to advise that the detailed confidential tender evaluation panel report has been provided to Council previously. The recommendation is detailed at the top of page 52 of tonight's agenda and is on the screen in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Josipovic. Councillors, any questions? No questions. I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion. Sorry, no, I'll take a question. My apologies.
With the four contractors that you put into this process, so when you employ them, are they employed on whatever rate, or have they got a fixed rate, or I'm a bit concerned that if you, well, being a contractor, if you haven't got them tied down, things can escalate. Have we got a buffer in there that says it's worth X amount?
What we do with the panel of suppliers is they provide a scheduler rate, so effectively an hourly rate. but we still do have a procurement policy that says any job over a certain amount, we would still seek a quote, and we would go to these panels to ask for a quote for that total job, and then we pick the best for that job.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, both Hansford and Councillor Evans seconding the motion. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's great to see that we've got this amount of local businesses that we can actually choose from to be, that are comply to be on Council's register for general maintenance. Spread from the north to the south of the Shire, so it's great to see a good spread, and it's wonderful to see this amount of people in general maintenance register. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Look, one of the things that was very rewarding when we saw this in our briefing was the documentation that was put together. I think the fact that the Local Government Act had now brought in that councillors with their procurement policies have to be now doing it as the Act defines, and I must admit that those documents have been the best I've seen since I've been on council, and I think if it's going to continue this way, it is good, and I think the benefits will be reflected across the Shire in terms of efficiencies and the fact that we have multiple people at different locations throughout the Shire also enable us to spread the benefits. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? There's no one speaking against the motion. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.12, Panel of Suppliers, Plumbing Maintenance Services. Again, Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Similar to the previous report, Council has historically utilised several plumbing contractors for plumbing maintenance on an ad hoc basis. And for the same reasons outlined in the previous report, we advertised a tender for a panel of suppliers for the plumbing maintenance services. We had 9 tenders received, and this report seeks to appoint 4 contractors to the plumbing maintenance service panel, again for an initial term of 2 years with a 1-year option at Council's discretion. The 4 recommended contractors have been assessed as providing best value for money, and the detailed confidential tender evaluation panel report has been provided to Council previously. The recommendation is detailed on the screen in front of you and on page 54 of tonight's agenda.
Mr CEO.
Yep. Through you, Mr Mayor, sorry to close out on this as well, to the Director. I just wanted to acknowledge for the Council and the community, this now brings us into full compliance with we are now fully in compliance with the legislative requirements. You will recall that over the last couple of years and following the Inspectorate's report, there was concerns raised around our procurement practices and our lack of having a panel of suppliers to do small works like these. The staff over the last 18 months have gone back and reviewed each and every one of the services that we provide or engage, and went back out to full tender and have developed panels of suppliers like this for each and every one of our services, painting, plumbing, all those types of things. This is the last of those services that needed to get a panel of suppliers, so I'm really pleased with the work the staff have done over the 18 months, and I can now hand on heart say we're fully compliant with our legislative requirements.
Thank you kindly, Mr CEO. Councillors, any questions? And there's the motion, the recommendation there, item 7.12.
The motion.
Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Seconding the motion, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Evans.
This is exactly the same as our last one we just dealt with. No differences, just an excellent going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, look, listen, it's a pretty straightforward recommendation that has to be implemented, and as you just heard from the CEO, we've just got to do it, so it's something that needs to be done. And also, too, it's good to see that some of our local businesses are involved in this plumbing maintenance services contract, and a lot of them employ mostly local residents. So thank you Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With nobody speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item number 8, we have no notices of motion, no petitions or no urgent business received, and we have no confidential reports for decision. So, having said that, I will close the meeting at